Friends, welcome to Talevora. Today, we uncover one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in modern history, the story of the Isdal Woman. A woman with no identity, no past, and no answers. A journey filled with mystery, secrets, hidden identities, and questions that remain unsolved even today. Let's begin. In the early morning of November 29, 1970, the peaceful Isdalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, looked no different from any other autumn morning. Thick fog drifted silently between the mountains while cold winds swept through the narrow trails. The valley was known for its breathtaking beauty, but locals also called it Death Valley because several hikers had tragically lost their lives there over the years. Nobody could have imagined that this quiet place was about to become the center of one of Europe's greatest unsolved mysteries. A father and his two young daughters decided to spend the morning hiking through the valley. They walked slowly along the rocky path, enjoying the fresh mountain air and the peaceful silence surrounding them. Suddenly, one of the girls noticed something unusual further ahead. At first she thought it was nothing more than a pile of burned branches lying among the rocks. But as they walked closer, an unbearable smell filled the air. The father immediately realized something was terribly wrong. Lying between several large rocks was the burned body of a woman. The scene was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Parts of her clothing had been almost completely destroyed by fire. Yet strangely, some areas remained untouched. Around her body were several unusual objects: a broken umbrella, melted plastic bottles, a burned passport cover, rubber boots, and personal belongings that appeared to have been deliberately damaged. It didn't look like an accident. It looked as if someone had wanted to erase every clue about who she was. Police officers quickly arrived and sealed off the entire area. Experienced investigators examined every inch of the scene, expecting to find some form of identification. But there was nothing. No passport, no driver's license, no wallet, no documents revealing her name. Even the labels on her clothes had been carefully cut away. Every single item that could identify the woman had disappeared. That immediately raised a terrifying question. Who was she? The investigators carefully collected every piece of evidence. Her body showed signs of severe burns, but something else immediately caught their attention. Although the fire had caused major damage, it did not appear to be the actual cause of death. The mystery became even stranger during the autopsy. Doctors discovered that the woman had swallowed a large number of sleeping pills before her death. Toxicology reports revealed dozens of tablets inside her stomach. She had also inhaled large amounts of carbon monoxide while still alive, meaning she had been breathing during the fire. But there were also bruises around her neck, suggesting she might have suffered an injury before the flames reached her. Was it suicide? Was it murder? Or had someone carefully staged the entire scene? The more investigators looked, the stranger everything became. The woman's fingerprints showed she was approximately 40 years old. She had dark brown hair and appeared physically healthy. Her dental work was unusually expensive and professionally completed, suggesting she had access to significant financial resources. Yet despite checking missing person records across Norway and neighboring countries, nobody reported her missing. It was as though she had never existed. Then police made a discovery that completely changed the investigation. At Bergen railway station, investigators located two suitcases that had been left inside a luggage locker only days before the woman's body had been discovered. The locker key had been found hidden inside the woman's belongings near the crime scene. Everyone expected the luggage to reveal her identity. Instead, it created an even bigger mystery. Inside the suitcases were elegant clothing, wigs of different hairstyles, expensive cosmetics, maps, sunglasses, notebooks filled with strange coded writing, and several foreign currencies from different European countries. There were also spoons with fingerprints matching the dead woman, proving the luggage belonged to her. But once again, every clothing label had been removed. Every manufacturer tag had been cut away. Every possible clue pointing toward her identity had been deliberately erased. Police became convinced this could not be a coincidence. Someone had spent enormous effort making sure nobody could ever discover who this woman really was. The notebooks were perhaps the most puzzling discovery of all. Instead of names or addresses, investigators found page after page filled with mysterious combinations of letters, numbers, and symbols. At first glance they looked completely meaningless, but cryptography experts believed they were actually coded travel records documenting movements between different European cities. When detectives compared hotel records across Europe, they uncovered something extraordinary. The unknown woman had traveled through Norway, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, France, and several other countries over many months. Even more shocking, she had checked into hotels using different names every single time. Different passports, different nationalities. What exactly was she running from? Or, who was she secretly working for? As investigators retraced the mysterious woman's final movements, they discovered a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Hotel records showed that she rarely behaved like an ordinary tourist. While most travelers visited famous landmarks or spent time enjoying the cities they explored, this woman seemed interested in something entirely different. She often left her hotel early in the morning, disappeared for several hours without telling anyone where she was going, and returned shortly before nightfall. Staff members noticed that she frequently changed rooms, requested accommodations overlooking streets rather than scenic views, and always appeared alert, as though she expected someone to be watching her. Some employees later told investigators that she constantly looked over her shoulder before entering hotel lobbies. Others remembered her quietly observing everyone around her without attracting attention herself. It was the behavior of someone living with constant fear, yet fear of what remained unknown. One hotel receptionist recalled that she spoke several languages fluently but always tried to hide her accent. Sometimes she claimed to be Belgian. Other times she said she was French. On another occasion she introduced herself as coming from South Africa. Every identity sounded believable, yet none could ever be verified. Detectives eventually uncovered nearly 10 different false names connected to her travels. Each passport contained convincing personal information, but every identity turned out to be fake. It was becoming increasingly difficult to believe that an ordinary traveler could maintain such an elaborate collection of aliases without professional assistance. Then another strange detail emerged. Several witnesses remembered seeing the woman meeting unknown men inside cafes, hotel restaurants, and public parks. These meetings were always brief. There were no friendly conversations, no signs of romance, and no visible arguments. The two people would quietly exchange a few words before walking away in different directions. None of the men were ever identified. Nobody knew whether they were business contacts, intelligence agents, or complete strangers. Yet investigators could not ignore how carefully every meeting appeared to have been planned. The possibility that the Isdal woman had connections to international espionage suddenly became much more than simple speculation. During the Cold War, Europe had become one of the world's largest playgrounds for intelligence agencies. Norway held particular strategic importance because of its proximity to Soviet military activities in the north. NATO bases, naval facilities, radar installations, and classified defense projects made the region extremely valuable to foreign spies. Some investigators quietly wondered whether the mysterious woman had been gathering information connected to military installations across Scandinavia. Their suspicions grew stronger after reviewing her travel routes. Several of the towns she visited happened to be located near sensitive military facilities. Although this alone proved nothing, the pattern was difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Intelligence officers from Norway reportedly became involved behind the scenes, though very little information about their investigation has ever been released publicly. Some documents remained classified for decades, adding even more mystery to an already confusing case. Meanwhile, forensic experts continued examining every item found inside the suitcases. One discovery stood out immediately. They found traces of pollen, cosmetics, medicines, and unusual chemical residues that suggested the woman had traveled extensively across different climates and countries. Yet none of these clues brought investigators any closer to discovering her real identity. Even the expensive dental work inside her mouth created another puzzle. Specialists concluded that the treatment had likely been performed somewhere in Central Europe, possibly Germany or Belgium. Police contacted dental associations across multiple countries, hoping someone would recognize the unique combination of procedures. No match was ever found. It was almost as though every official record connected to her life had vanished. Investigators then turned their attention toward the coded notebook recovered from the luggage. After weeks of analysis, cryptography experts finally believed they had partially solved the mystery. The strange combinations of letters and numbers appeared to represent dates, cities, hotels, and methods of transportation. Each code documented another stage of the woman's journey across Europe. She had traveled under different identities with remarkable precision, carefully recording each movement in a language only she seemed able to understand. Yet even after decoding large portions of the notebook, one enormous question remained unanswered. Why had she been traveling so extensively? Ordinary tourists did not erase clothing labels, carry multiple disguises, maintain false identities, and write their movements in secret codes. Whatever her true purpose had been, she had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide it. Detectives also reconstructed her final days in Bergen. Witnesses reported seeing her purchasing food, checking into hotels, and walking calmly through the city as though nothing unusual was happening. But several people noticed she occasionally appeared nervous whenever another person entered the room. One waiter remembered that she suddenly stopped eating after spotting someone outside the restaurant window. Another witness claimed she quickly packed her belongings and changed hotels immediately after receiving what seemed to be an unexpected visitor. Whether those events were connected to her death remains unknown. Then investigators uncovered perhaps the strangest witness statement of all. A local resident claimed to have seen the woman hiking toward Isdalen Valley shortly before her death. According to this witness, she was not alone. Two unidentified men dressed in dark clothing were walking a short distance behind her. They never appeared to speak to one another, yet they remained close throughout the journey. Police launched an extensive search to identify those men, interviewing countless people throughout Bergen. No one ever came forward. The mysterious companion simply disappeared, leaving investigators with another question that has never been answered. If the witness was correct, who were the two men following the Isdal woman on the final day of her life? And more importantly, did they walk back out of Death Valley? The investigation continued for months, yet every new discovery seemed to create even more unanswered questions. Norwegian police shared details with investigators across Europe, hoping that someone, somewhere, would recognize the mysterious woman. Thousands of photographs were distributed to police departments, border officials, and intelligence agencies. Her fingerprints were compared against criminal databases in numerous countries. Every effort ended the same way: no match. It was as though the Isdal woman had appeared from nowhere and disappeared forever without leaving behind a single trace of her real identity. As public interest grew, newspapers across Norway began publishing dramatic headlines about the unknown woman found in Death Valley. Citizens flooded police stations with tips. Some claimed they had spoken to her on trains. Others believed they had seen her shopping in different cities. A few even insisted they knew her real name. Detectives carefully investigated every lead, but one after another they collapsed under closer examination. None brought investigators any closer to solving the mystery. Meanwhile, intelligence experts quietly continued examining the possibility that the woman had worked for a foreign spy agency. During the Cold War, espionage operations were taking place across Europe almost daily. Secret agents frequently traveled using false identities, fake passports, coded notebooks, and cash payments. The Isdal woman seemed to fit many of those patterns. She spoke multiple languages fluently, constantly changed her appearance, traveled between strategic locations, carried coded records, and carefully removed identifying marks from her belongings. Yet there was one major problem with the spy theory. No intelligence service ever admitted knowing who she was. Historians later searched declassified Cold War documents from several countries, hoping her identity might finally appear after decades of secrecy. Nothing was found. If she truly had been an intelligence operative, someone had erased every official record with astonishing precision. Another theory suggested she may have been involved in illegal smuggling or underground criminal networks. Europe during the 1960s and 1970s saw increasing activity involving forged passports, black market trading, and international trafficking organizations. Some investigators wondered whether the Isdal woman had been transporting information rather than goods. Others believed she might have been delivering messages between secret contacts across multiple countries. Once again, however, no evidence ever confirmed those suspicions. There was another possibility that many people overlooked. Perhaps the woman had not been running secret missions at all. Perhaps she had simply been running from someone. Witnesses consistently described her as nervous, cautious, and constantly aware of her surroundings. She rarely trusted strangers, frequently changed hotels, and often altered her appearance. Those behaviors could belong to a professional spy, but they could just as easily describe someone living in fear. Had she become the target of dangerous individuals? Was she hiding under false identities simply to stay alive? If so, who had been chasing her across Europe? Detectives returned once again to the mysterious final journey into Isdalen Valley. The official investigation concluded that the woman had died after consuming sleeping tablets before the fire. Yet several experienced investigators privately admitted they were never completely convinced. The bruising around her neck remained difficult to explain. The carefully arranged objects surrounding the body seemed unnatural. Why had personal belongings been burned separately? Why had labels been removed from every piece of clothing before her death? Why had expensive jewelry remained untouched if robbery had been the motive? Most importantly, why would someone planning suicide spend months traveling under multiple false identities before choosing an isolated valley in Norway? None of those questions had satisfying answers. Decades passed, but the mystery refused to disappear. Every few years journalists returned to the case, interviewing retired detectives and examining forgotten evidence with fresh eyes. New forensic technology offered hope that modern science might finally succeed where earlier investigations had failed. DNA samples were carefully preserved. Advanced facial reconstruction techniques were used to produce updated images showing what the woman might have looked like in life. Genealogists began exploring the possibility of identifying her through distant family DNA. Although these efforts produced fascinating clues about her possible European ancestry, they still failed to reveal her actual name. Then, many years later, international media organizations reopened the investigation in collaboration with forensic experts. Using modern laboratory methods unavailable in 1970, scientists analyzed her teeth, bone structure, and genetic material more thoroughly than ever before. They concluded that she had probably grown up somewhere in Central Europe, possibly near the border regions of Germany, France, or Belgium. It was an important breakthrough, yet even this remarkable discovery stopped just short of answering the question everyone wanted solved. Who was the Isdal woman? More than half a century has passed since her body was discovered among the silent rocks of Death Valley. The hotels where she stayed have changed. The witnesses have grown old. Many of the original investigators are no longer alive. But the mystery remains exactly where it began. Somewhere in Europe there may still be someone who once knew her real name, someone who remembers her face, someone who understands why she crossed borders under false identities and why she ended her final journey alone in a remote Norwegian valley. Until that person comes forward, the Isdal woman will remain one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, a woman without a name, without a past, and without an ending. Yet one final revelation would emerge years later, giving investigators their most important clue ever, and raising one last question that continues to divide experts even today. In the decades that followed, the Isdal woman became far more than an unsolved police case. She became a symbol of one of history's greatest unanswered mysteries. Books were written about her. Television documentaries explored every possible theory. Investigative journalists spent years searching through forgotten archives, interviewing retired detectives, and examining evidence that had remained untouched for generations. Yet despite all those efforts, one simple question continued to haunt everyone involved. Who was she? Modern forensic science eventually gave investigators their greatest opportunity in more than 50 years. Scientists extracted DNA from preserved evidence and carried out advanced isotope analysis on her teeth. Unlike the technology available in 1970, modern laboratories could study tiny chemical traces that revealed where a person likely spent their childhood. The results suggested that the Isdal woman had probably grown up somewhere in Central Europe, most likely near the border regions of Germany, France, Belgium, or Luxembourg. This discovery narrowed the search significantly, but it still failed to reveal her identity. Even with modern DNA analysis, facial reconstruction, and international cooperation, no family ever came forward to claim her. That fact alone remains one of the strangest parts of the entire mystery. Every person leaves behind parents, relatives, childhood friends, neighbors, or classmates. Yet no one ever recognized her with certainty. It almost seemed as if every connection to her past had vanished along with her name. Another fascinating clue continued to puzzle investigators. Witnesses consistently described the woman as intelligent, elegant, disciplined, and extremely careful. She always carried herself with confidence. She dressed professionally, spoke multiple languages fluently, and adapted easily to different cultures. Those qualities convinced many experts that she had received specialized training of some kind. Whether that training came from intelligence services, diplomatic work, or another profession has never been proven. Some former intelligence officers later admitted that certain aspects of her behavior resembled Cold War espionage techniques. Frequent travel under false identities, coded notebooks, changing appearances with wigs, paying only in cash, and avoiding personal conversations were all methods sometimes used by undercover agents. However, no official government has ever confirmed that the Isdal woman worked for any intelligence organization. Without documentary evidence, the spy theory remains exactly what it has always been, a possibility, not a proven fact. Other researchers believe the truth may be far simpler. They argue that she could have been fleeing an abusive relationship, organized crime, or political persecution. During the Cold War, thousands of people crossed European borders carrying false documents to escape dangerous situations. Perhaps the coded notebook was simply her personal method of recording safe travel routes. Perhaps the wigs were nothing more than an attempt to avoid being recognized. Perhaps the false identities were not evidence of espionage but desperate efforts to survive. Unfortunately, every explanation leaves important questions unanswered. If she was hiding from someone who found her in Isdalen Valley, if she chose to end her own life, why were there unexplained injuries and carefully destroyed belongings? If she was murdered, who managed to eliminate every clue pointing toward her identity? These unanswered questions are exactly why the case continues to fascinate investigators more than half a century later. Even today, new theories appear regularly. Internet communities, historians, retired detectives, forensic experts, and ordinary people continue examining old evidence, hoping to notice something everyone else missed. Every few years another article appears claiming the mystery is finally close to being solved. Yet every new theory eventually reaches the same dead end. There is simply not enough evidence to say with certainty who the Isdal woman really was. Perhaps somewhere, hidden inside an old family photograph, there is an image of her under another name. Perhaps forgotten government archives still contain documents that have never been released. Perhaps someone, somewhere in Europe, once loved her, searched for her, and never discovered what became of her. Until undeniable evidence appears, her true identity remains locked away in history. The woman found alone in Norway's Death Valley continues to keep her greatest secret. And maybe that is why this story has never been forgotten. Some mysteries frighten us because of what we know. Others stay with us because of what we never learn. The Isdal woman reminds us that even in an age of technology, fingerprints, DNA, satellites, and digital records, a human being can still disappear so completely that history cannot even remember her name. More than 50 years have passed, but the mystery remains alive. Somewhere between truth and speculation, between history and legend, the Isdal woman still walks through the pages of one of the world's greatest unsolved cases. Perhaps one day the final piece of the puzzle will finally appear. Until then, her identity remains one of the greatest secrets Europe has ever known. If you enjoyed this true story and want more real mysteries, forgotten legends, and unbelievable historical stories, subscribe to Talevora and join us for another unforgettable journey. Because every mystery hides a secret, and every secret has a story waiting to be told.